Hey everyone, Mike Campbell with Rekluse here. Today we're going to go over free play gain, slip, and drag, and how they all kind of relate to each other, and the do's and don'ts on setting up your motorcycle to make sure you have a great experience whether you're on the track or the trails. What we have here is a Radius CX kit specifically for a KX450, but what we're going to go over will cover all of our EXP technology. It will apply to you whether you have a slave cylinder or even if you have a cable adjustment. And at the end of the video, we'll actually show you physically on the motorcycle how these can affect how the bike operates. So we have a free play gain video that we put together. We'll put that link in the description. So we're not going to go completely into describing free play gain. So if you're not familiar with it, please check out that video and maybe return back. So free play gain, we're setting the gap of where the pressure plate is as opposed to the clutch pack. We want there to be a gap between the two. That gap, most of the time, needs to be between 30 to 35 thousandths is what we're looking for. So free play gain, when you give it that healthy blip with the throttle, the lever jumps in that 1/8 of an inch, we know that you're roughly within that gap, you're set up correctly and good to go. I'm gonna give you a quick description on what is physically happening if you have a slave cylinder adjuster. As you turn your slave cylinder adjuster in clockwise, what you're physically doing is you are pushing the push rod that goes all the way through the engine and is connected directly to your pressure plate. As you turn that clockwise, it lifts the pressure plate further away, giving you less free play gain. As you go counterclockwise, it drops it closer. With different bikes that don't have slave cylinders, like this guy right here with the clutch cable, if you have Radius X, you're actually going to use your clutch cable to make those free play gain adjustments. If you have Radius CX, you have the option of doing the external adjustment with your clutch cable or the internal adjustment, which requires you popping the clutch cover off. So when you're setting free play gain, you want to get that 1/8 of an inch that we're looking for, or 1/4 of an inch. There are a few different models that vary a tad bit, but in general, 1/8 of an inch is what we're looking for, and you really want to leave it there. Once you got that set, if you have drag or slip, or you don't like the way it engages, leave your free play gain alone and look at your EXP disc, because that's where we want to go to. Here we got our different EXP springs. So starting at the softest one down here, our raw colors, just a raw steel, that's our softest spring that we have. Then we got silver, red, blue, gold, green, and white. The green and whites, you're really not going to see those unless you have a V-twin, a Harley, an Indian, something like that. In the dirt bike world, these are the ones that you're typically going to see come in the box. So the KX450 in particular, Radius CX, will come with 3 red and 3 blue inside the disc. And that's going to work for the big majority of our customers out of the box. Most people don't even change those springs. However, if you want it to be a little bit more aggressive, you might want to go with all 6 blue and bump your idle up a tad bit. Or if you want it to be a little less aggressive, you don't want that thing ripping your arms off at every corner, then you can go to 6 red and drop that idle a little bit, and it makes it a little smoother, a little linear off the bottom when you're first cracking the throttle. And again, these EXP springs, what they control is when you're at an idle without touching the clutch lever, if you just crack that throttle open, these are the springs that are controlling that initial engagement. And so this is where you can really kind of fine tune that. If you got proper free play gain, you click it into gear, and the bike has just got too much drag on it, it's trying to kind of pull forward on you, then we're going to want to change these springs. So in that case, using this KX450 as an example, with 3 red and 3 blue, red being softer, blue being harder, in this case, you'd want to end up with 6 blue inside of it. That will stop those wedges from trying to expand, hold them back at an idle, so you can sit there in gear without having to fight your motorcycle. If you can slightly, just very slightly, feel a little bit of drag or pulsing, and the motorcycle kind of wants to move forward, that's perfect. That's right at the edge of engagement and where we want it, and it's going to give you the quickest throttle response. If it's pulling you forward, or say you hit the rear brake and it's just pulling the engine down and it ends up stalling or dying, the 2-strokes can do that sometimes, that's too much. We don't want that much. And so that's when we would want to change this. All right, so now what we're going to go over, I'm going to use one of the newer Cowies here with an adjustable slave cylinder to give a couple examples of what it's going to look like if you do have the wrong springs in there or the idle is too high, and how to go through these different adjustments and diagnose what you actually would need to change to make the bike work the way you want it to work. All right, so this bike's already warmed up. I got free play gain set. I know it's going to work perfect the way I have it set up right now. So this is an example of what I would expect with a proper setup Rekluse. So my free play gain, let's just double check that real quick here. Okay, we know that's set right. So right now, if I click it into gear, it should essentially just sit there. That's exactly what it's doing. If I let it go, it just ever so slightly will walk forward. But as soon as I put my weight on it, which I'm only $150 and vertically challenged, it sits there with pretty much no effort, and that's exactly what we'd expect. This keeps it right at the edge of engagement. I can feel it kind of wanting to move forward just a tad bit, but as soon as I breathe on this throttle, it is moving forward. That's perfect. That is exactly what we're looking for. Now what I'll do is I'll bump the idle up and show you that kind of drag that can be fixed by either dropping the idle a little bit if you're able to adjust the idle, or if you're gonna have to change your EXP springs. So now you can hear that idle raising up quite a bit. And so now if I click it into gear, that guy's really gonna try and walk forward. Now I gotta really kind of hold this thing back. You know, over time as the clutch heats up, it's probably gonna get even worse. Now I'm gonna leave it in gear and hold the front brake. All right, now it's back down, and I really just, I can just barely hold the seat, and it sits there just about perfect. With a lot of the newer bikes being fuel injected, there's a big majority of them now that you really can't adjust the idle unless you get the CDI box remapped or purchase an aftermarket CDI box and get it mapped, things like that, which gets very expensive. So if you're not able to adjust the idle, that's when those EXP springs become a lot more important. Now what I'll do is I will adjust the free play gain so there is too much free play gain to show that effect of what it's going to look like if you have too much free play gain. See how far that jumped in that time? That's too much. So now I'm going to hold the front brake because I know it's going to jump forward. But if I click it into gear now, it's really trying to, you hear it lugging down the engine, and you know, that's where you do want to actually change your free play gain, get that down to the 1/8 of an inch. But that is too much free play gain. So that's better. That's still maybe just a tad bit too much, but it clicks into gear and it sits there. As much free play gain as you can run without it trying to drag forward or stall on you is good. It's the safe side of the spectrum to be on. We'll go to the other extreme here real quick. See, it's just barely moving there. You can't even hardly see anything. It's just barely moving in. It's not enough. With having very, very little to no free play gain is not the safe side of the spectrum to be on. Especially at high RPMs, that's where the clutch is doing its most work, and if it's slipping and creating heat at really high RPMs, that's when a clutch pack can go like that really quickly. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of that free play gain. So just to kind of once over real quick there, get your free play gain set. Once you got that set correctly, if you have anything else going on when you click it into gear, most likely you would need to change the springs in the EXP disc, or possibly something was wrong in the install, in which case you can give our tech line a call.